Hey, welcome back to the podcast, Evil Dungeon Master Universe Podcast. I'm your host, Evil Dungeon Master Revenge. It is Wednesday. It's time for another podcast. Hopefully you're doing well out there. Ask the DM at theevildm.com is my email address. Theevildm.com is my website, where you can go see everything that I'm doing. Yay. Anyway, today I want to talk a little bit about something in the Dungeon Master's Guide, because I was busy this past week creating dungeons and hex mapping for my upcoming campaign. That's going to be basic fantasy. The group decided on basic fantasy after looking over all the books and giving them a choice of what fantasy game to play. AD&D was in the mix, but they decided they wanted basic fantasy because it looked easier to them, and they've never played it, and they like some of the options involved with the game. So I said, all right, sure, why not? It's old school. It's everything we like. So I was building using the Appendix A and I for dungeon dressings and things like that, and building my things and doing the hex mapping for Appendix, I believe it's B, on page 73. And then I got to Appendix H, tricks. I have completely disregarded this appendix whatsoever because it's a hoot after reading it. I mean, I've probably read this before and went, I'm probably never going to use this, but now I'm just like, this is kind of awesome. On page 216 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, it says, as with traps, there are nearly endless number of tricks which can be devised and used in a campaign. Most experienced Dungeon Masters will probably already have a proud repertoire of clever and innovative, not to mention unique and outstanding, artifices, deceptions, conundrums, and sundry tricks which to put to shame the humble offering which follows. Nonetheless, these might serve for those who have not yet had the experience and seasoning necessary to invent more clever devices to bring to the overbold and incautious characters. Even if you are fairly conservative with your idea of tricks in the dungeon, check the list anyway, for you might find one or two things that are useful here for an idea. And there are some great ideas here. The first list is a features commonly found in the dungeon. Thereafter is a longer list of attributes. Select a feature or several as desired. Assign one or more attribute to each feature, or combination of therefore in order to develop an interesting trick which will challenge the players and yet not be too difficult for the level of experience of their characters. When you come to the appropriate spot in your dungeon, or elsewhere for that matter, place it with an additional few tricky attributes to otherwise unremarkable or now ordinary features. So features that they have listed here are just in the suggestion, and you could probably make up your own when it comes to this, but it has things like altars, the containers, a dome, a door, a secret door, a fireplace, a force field, interesting, fountain, painting, vegetation, a well, a stairway, a room, just common things that you find in a room. A monster, for that matter, too. And the attributes of the trick are really weird. Some of them ages them, animates them, appearing and disappearing, attacks, changes alignment, attribute, class, mind from body to body, and changes sex. Combination disintegrates, distorts. I don't think disintegrate would be something that's a trick, but I guess it wouldn't yet. The following are examples of tricks that are offered as a guide only. Various such tricks in order to avoid the possibility of player knowledge, so don't repeat the same thing more than once or try to give away the same thing more than once. Altar. Touching this feature without uttering the name of the deity to which it is dedicated will alternately do the following. Age the character 10 years. Animate his or her weapon for 4 rounds. And cause them to attack their owner, i.e. like the Sword of Dancing. Or cause cancellation, as the rod, to drain his or her most powerful magical item of all of its power. If the deity's name is uttered when the altar is touched, then the characters of neutral alignment will have a wish granted if it was made within the turn. So you only have a turn to make a wish. Characters of other alignment will have a gift laid upon them to go and slay a monster who is not part of the deity's favored list. But upon successful completion of this duty, they will too be granted a wish. Kind of interesting how it is a trick, but yet it is a trap at the same time. And it's not something to take lightly. And this is part of the whole Gygaxian, I'm going to screw with my players and possibly ruin their time because, don't go touching shit you don't know what it's about. It's kind of like when you're a kid and, your mom tells you, don't randomly touch things and don't randomly touch buttons and don't do this. And what do little kids do? I mean, they do exactly the opposite because they want to know why. I could tell you a story when I was a little kid. I used to push buttons all the time. And one time I pushed a button and it was silent alarm, but it wasn't so silent and it triggered police to come to the doctor's office. And speaking of which, I don't know why the doctor had a silent alarm in his office, but that here nor there. I think I was like 5. And I remember I pushed the button and that, things went off and the doctor went, okay. And he got a call from whatever security company and he explained it was just an accident. But I remember my mom telling me, don't touch what you don't know. Sure, it looked like a doorbell, which was, I remember, looked like an actual old school doorbell. Doesn't mean you go pushing it. Gygax follows the same process when it comes to dungeons and exploring. Don't touch what you don't know. Now, is it fair? Probably not, but that's the breaks of being an adventurer. You go out into the world adventuring and risk your life, and it could be something as small as touching an altar. And they go on to give you some more examples here, and you can even roll on some of the tables to get more idea. Oh, there's no rolls. That's dungeon dressing. I apologize. For a monster, because I was curious about that. The shriekers found in an area have a heavy growth of yellow mold upon them, and if they are struck, the spores will spread out in their usual poisonous cloud. These creatures totally surrounded a pedestal. So basically, their spores will. That really doesn't tell us much about what you're going to get other than a poison. So that's not that big of a deal, but secret door. This pivoting stone portal will always swing open to the left, giving egress to the area guarded by a basilisk. Oh, yay. However, if a second hidden stud is found, 1% chance, then it will pivot to the right, allowing entry into a chamber containing a magical fountain. See, now that's kind of cool. It goes, one way to the monster, and if you figure out it's a pivoting door, it'll go to like a chamber magical fountain where you're going to touch that magical fountain because there's a fountain right below. This feature is a beautiful work of onyx and jet black stone. A grinning gargoyle and a lovely nymph are depicted, the former with his mouth open, the latter with a pitcher. As soon as the party enters, the gargoyle will ask a riddle, and if it's not answered, it will spray poison upon the group. Save or dead. If answered, the nymph will recite a poem, which is a clue to a special treasure. But the fountain itself, you can actually give some things like maybe it. I don't think there's anything really positive here on this list, except for a wish fulfillment. It could teleport you somewhere. Maybe it'll teleport you back up to the beginning of the dungeon as a quick way out. Maybe it'll teleport you somewhere into the dungeon. Maybe it'll make you invisible. Maybe it'll turn you into stone. Maybe it'll give you an electrical shock. Maybe it'll disintegrate you as soon as you touch it. That'd be kind of really, really mean. Save or disintegrate and die. Imagine that. You're finally playing a game and you touch this water in the fountain and boom. I mean, I guess you can give hints about that disintegration fountain by having like little piles of dust around the fountain edges, like they do in movies when they find those. They go to a new land and they finally find water and they rush over to it and they're still thirsty. But looking around, you see like dead skeletons around the edge of the water, meaning everybody that drank from there died instantly and then deteriorated. So you know that. I like the idea of giving you a quest, which gives you something to do. Uh, oh wow! I just realized there's a wish fulfillment reversal. So you would wish for whatever you want, but you just get the opposite of what the wish actually is. That is cruel. Gygax really decided to screw with people here. He loved doing the change sex thing. I can guarantee that because there's a lot of items that are uh, that are done for changing sex. So I think he thought that was funny, which actually it is quite comical at times. But I don't know. I remember a couple times that we did we were playing games back when I was in high school and I wasn't actually running the games. We would play tricks on one another as characters and set up like little like mage would do, or I think it was illusionist, did ghost sounds to try to trick the paladin into thinking somebody was attacking, and he'd run out of the room, thinking that someone was out there attacking, and meanwhile me and the thief of the party, I was just a regular fighter. We were actually evil. We went in there and we stole a portion of the gold that he had because we wanted more gold. And yeah, our party was mixed between good and evil. And the paladin was like, paladin really shouldn't be working with evil characters at all. But the DM said it was fine as long as the paladin looked at it as a way to try to convert us. And we were like, oh, yeah, sure. So we would constantly play tricks on him when I was, me and the thief. Whenever we had a chance, we would definitely, like, when it came to searching houses, we'd push him in closets and lock the door. I remember one time the thief went a little too far with that, and he pushed the paladin in the closet, locked the door, barricaded the door, and then started a fire, almost burning the character to death inside there. And when we would find pit traps, we would push him in. I think it's more of a bullying than than playing tricks on, but we did have fun, and even the paladin character did have fun trying to figure out what we would do next. There was no hard feelings against the person himself. We were just doing it to be goofs. And the DM loved it because most DMs actually do like some type of little banter strife between a party. And don't let any DM think not. When a party argues or kind of tries to debate things or maybe even doesn't know what they want to do and they converse, a DM does like that. I know I like that personally because it gives me a chance to catch my breath as a DM, think about what I want to do next while they're doing their conversation, while they're arguing over whatever. And I could generally stop it very easily because I make things happen as the dungeon master. I'll just, throw in an event that'll stop them from arguing and they never go back to it. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing here with the tricks. I think using tricks probably would be not a good idea for low level characters. Higher level characters, yeah, because you're used to things like this, but I don't know. I really would like to know was going through Gygax's head when he did Appendix H for tricks. Was he like, hey, let's think of a good way to, kind of mess with people and really screw them over Because, some of these things in here really, really screw you over. I mean, poison or die, lose points to attributes, um, age you, animate weapons and stuff like that, anti-magic. I don't know what I think about this now. First, I was just like, this is kind of cool, but then now that I'm more really in depth reading it, because I kind of was glancing over this last night when I was building the dungeon, and I went down to here. I'm like, hey, this would be a good topic for the next podcast tomorrow. I'll talk about Appendix H and tricks. And I'm like, oh, okay, as with traps and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, this isn't so bad. And I didn't really look over the list too detailed. And now that I'm reading it out loud and talking about it and talking about experiences doing things in games, I'm like, maybe it's not so interesting. I don't know. I mean, Gary, what were you thinking, buddy? I'm sure he didn't use these things after a time period in his life, because a lot of times when he ran games, he would completely do the opposite of what's in this book. As he got older, based on reading what he did in games and people that I played with in various conventions that said that they played with Gygax personally, said that he did a lot of changing of rules when it came to the game, which tells you, anyone out there, that these books are just guidelines. They're not the final say all be all of anything. And there's no wrong way to play the game. As long as you and your group are having fun, then who cares? The Dungeon Master is just an arbitrator, a referee. He has to make a judgment call half the time on things. And if the judgment call is to continue the game forward with just rolling a die just so we can move forward, then do that. I don't see why you have to stop a game to look through a book to figure something out, because that's boring. And I used to hate that when people would do that when we were playing. They would actually be like, oh, I don't know, let me look in the book. And it's just like, ugh. Just roll a die and make a decision. Look later. That's all I ever do. And if it's the wrong decision and the book has something for it, you talk to the player and be like, hey, you know what? I was trying to keep the action going, and I was trying to, make things fun. I rolled a die, but there's a rule right here. So going forward, why don't we worry about this? Here, jot this down so we know. And that's it. I don't know. I think I've probably said enough today about this and talked about my experiences. So I don't know what to tell you. Tell me what you think about Appendix H tricks. Would you use it in your campaign? I'm really interested to see. It's on page 216 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's just one page. Well, actually, it kind of goes into two page and a half because it explains things. And the last paragraph I didn't read, but it says, from these examples, you will note that nearly endless combinations are possible without your own ideas for addition, and these will surely come. There can be monsters hidden by illusional monsters, symbiotic monsters, monsters in combination pairs and trios, or whatever parts of the dungeon which is distorted, invisible, shifting, slanting, spinning, and so on. For some further examples of tricks in your campaign, you might wish to consult Dungeons & Dragons Volume 3, The Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, and Greyhawk Supplement 1. So, Gary gives you some further reading material to look at, and go ahead and look at that reading material, because I'm probably not going to look at that. But the dungeon dressing under Appendix I is something I will look at, because I got to dress my dungeons, get them a little suit and everything. Anyway, I'm going to head out. Keep it original. Keep it old school. Good night. God bless, and keep those AD&D fires lit. Good night.